Hey Tal, how you doing?
Hello, how are you?
Very well, very well. Let's introduce ourselves first. Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you very much for joining. My name's Tom Briant. I head up the global partnerships team here at Venatus Media. We're joined this afternoon by one of our latest publishers, Gfinity, and the delightful Talal Musa.
Thank you
So
very much.
we're going to be doing a Q&A session. Hopefully, you can find out a little bit more about Gfinity, how they've adapted to becoming an ad platform, a little bit about the world of esports, and hopefully debunk a few myths along the way too. Before we start, we will be taking questions at the end. So if you have any, please drop them into the chat function. And Kitty, who's organised today and is administrating this afternoon, will try and pick up some of the highlights and we'll answer those at the end. So first and foremost, Tal, how are you? Good?
Very well, very well. Hi everyone, very nice to be here. And Tom, thank you very much for inviting me.
No problem at all. Let's kick off. Tal, can you tell us a little bit about your past, kind of where you've worked and how you ended up at Gfinity and what it is exactly that you do there now?
Yeah, sure. So, short and sweet. So I was a journalist by trade. So I started back in tabloid newspapers, back in the News of the World, and then kind of went through there, went to the Daily Mail, mail.com when that was kind of, building up. And then kind of moved into PR and spent some time at Edelman and Saatchi before going back to News UK and kind of writing the headlines for the Sun. So I kind of live and breathe puns. And then, ended up kind of joining Gfinity and essentially being part of, a strategy that saw us grow very, very small, websites. So gfinitysports.com had about, 800 people on there, at this time last year. Now it's got, close to 8 million, and the same with Real Sport as well. So it's all about organic growth. The team we've got here specialise in SEO and building kind of SEO strategies and driving and building communities. So that's it.
Cool. Don't give us it all at once. The first question I want to ask you first, in very literal terms, for anybody, God forbid, that hasn't heard of Gfinity, can you describe what it is that you guys do at Gfinity, please?
Yeah, so I think Gfinity is an esports company. It's a company that we talk and we reach gamers, hard to reach gamers. We do that through tournaments, best in class tournaments with the likes of Premier League and Formula One and competitions, and broadcast to digital media, which is the stuff that I'm kind of focused on and work with you guys, and creating content that really kind of engages and grows an audience over a period of time. And then obviously we've got this arena as well. So, we put on some world-class broadcasts on there throughout. We've got a number of projects coming up there. So we try to kind of encapsulate everything about the kind of gaming sphere. And esports isn't just a kind of small subset of gaming. We want to try and talk to all of gamers through the different kind of pillars that we target.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit first of all about kind of the esports landscape.
Yeah.
For those that are not au fait, how would you describe kind of the world of esports right now?
Well, I think with esports has always, I think traditionally esports has always had a bit of a niche. People thought, oh, esports, you see the athletes competing at these huge tournaments and winning millions and millions of pounds. But actually, I think esports has changed now, and there's more grassroots than ever before. There's more gamers now interested in esports, both from a participation point of view, but also a viewing point of view as well. And you see that with Twitch, and you see that with the growth in our platforms, especially. More people want to read about esports content, and there's more gamers, casual gamers, being interested in competitive gaming. So I think over the past few years we've seen a rise of competitive gaming, and you see the way that games are shaped as well. They launch, and a lot of them now have a real kind of competitive element, but it's not elitist. Esports is something that caters to so many different audience types, and I
totally agree. I think a lot of people kind of make comparisons to traditional sports, and I think unlike traditional sports, there's the kind of a sense of community, and there's also kind of there's that lack of disconnect. I think you have elite gamers, you have casual gamers, and you actually have people that just want to view gaming content, and kind of it creates this lovely kind of merging, melting pot of a community. And actually, I think what's also interesting is that the challenges or the experiences or the gameplays that elite gamers are playing casual gamers are playing as well. You know, whether that be a patch update, whether that be hardware, it's experience from the top down, and I think you don't get that in kind of traditional sport.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think that's the thing that, you know, that needs to happen more of. I think breaking down those barriers between, you know, the hyper elite players and the different kind of leagues of performance. You know, it's not just about winning millions of pounds worth of prize money. You know, esports and competitive gaming is about bringing people together. And I think with COVID-19, you know, it's been devastating for a lot of people. The one very few, the one kind of plus point to come out of something like this is gaming's had a bit more of a centre stage than it has done before. And I think a lot of people have dusted off their PlayStations and Xboxes and suddenly rediscovered their love of gaming again. And it's been a mechanism to allow people to get together again and connect. You know, so instead of going to the cinema, you know, which is now X'd off, they've been playing, you know, Warzone together and building that relationship. You know, I've been doing that with my brother, you know, and Ramsey and I haven't been playing together for ages. And then suddenly this thing just kind of sparks our kind of love for it again. And now we do it most nights, much to the despair of my girlfriend. But, you know.
I think for most Venatus staff, it's just an opportunity to play even more gaming.
Yeah.
We'll touch on audience, and I think the emergence of gaming recently a little bit later. First of all, one of the questions I had, you know, for somebody that doesn't live and breathe esports, talk me through kind of some of the standout events of the year. You know, the equivalent like the Olympics or the World Cup, and give me some, you know, some level of insight into the scale of those events, please.
Yeah, so, you know, I think, yeah, obviously this year has been quite difficult, you know, and what you've seen is that a lot of kind of offline stuff is starting to kind of find its way online, because of the fact that, you know, you can't have these stadiums full of people at the moment. But, you know, I think some of the standout events of this year has actually been some of the virtual GP stuff that Gfinity has done. And for me, that really encapsulates what gaming is all about, and specifically kind of competitive and esports. You know, we've seen, you know, sport absolutely suppressed at a time, but then gaming suddenly being a vehicle to allow people to appreciate the competitive nature, how entertaining it is, you know, and the production values behind it to really, you know, tell compelling stories. So things like, you know, the virtual GP and the stuff we do with the EPL, and, you know, there's loads and loads of cases like that where, you know, this year for me, they've been the real kind of standouts. But I think there's going to be loads more to come. It's an interesting space. And you're seeing more and more brands now, endemic and non-endemic, moving into this space. And, you know, yes, they're doing amazing ad campaigns and stuff like that, but they're also looking at now, great, you know, how can we support that with tournament play? And so it's going to be a very, very interesting, you know, 12 months, I would say, probably supercharged by this, you know, kind of incubation effect that COVID's had.
Yeah, and listen, you know, I think the standout for me was, you know, we look after a lot of League of Legends sites here at Venatus, and, you know, the standout for last year, I think, was the World Championship League of Legends event. I think they had something like 45 million unique viewers, and, you know, obviously Louis Vuitton famously did a partnership with League of Legends. So I think, you know, the numbers and the scales are there.
Yeah.
Kind of leading out of that slightly, what parts of esport do you wish people either knew a little bit more about, or do you think are kind of most misunderstood?
Well, I think just on that earlier point, you know, more people watch Twitch than Netflix, you know, in the US. That was sort of YouTube gaming. So like that's, you know, that just shows the scale of this thing, and how you know, important it's been. It's seen now as an entertainment platform. But yeah, you know, to your point, I think there's loads and loads of there's just so many sites and so many things that we can do. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where we need to keep expanding and you know, growing a network and offering more opportunity.
And to that point, do you think esports has moved into the mainstream yet? Do they in fact even want to move into the mainstream?
Yeah, so I think, you know, esports, again, it goes back to the previous point about it being a niche. You know, I think it was seen as a niche, and now, as you know, you've seen with gaming that, you know, even games like Mortal Kombat, for example, you know, the way that those games are packaged, there's tutorials that specifically allow casual gamers to get better, and things like zoning and moving people around, and, you know, these are techniques that were traditionally always held back, you know, to the, you know, and only applicable to the esports kind of athletes. But now those kind of skills are trickling down into competitive and casual gameplay. So I think in that respect, it is moving into the mainstream. And I think what we're seeing is an upskilling of the player base, and that upskilling is then turning into more competitive gamers.
I totally agree, and I think we're all very guilty sometimes of if something isn't publicly visible outside of kind of the very big bubble that is gaming, it's not deemed mainstream. But I think some of the numbers that we talked about kind of just give you a sense of scale. For me, I think when we started to see esports covered within traditional sports space, seeing the likes of the F1 and the E-Premier League on Sky Sports and BT, and I know that you guys were involved in some of those events. I think seeing that shift into traditionally mainstream kind of domains, for me, was when I think we started to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, cool. Well, hopefully there are some people that joined us today that are either buying or kind of interested in buying esports as an audience. So let's talk about that a little bit. How would you describe the real sports or the Gfinity audience or audiences that you guys have?
So I think that's interesting because we've touched on this this almost pyramid of different. You've got the casual all the way up to kind of the athlete. I think that the main myth is that there is just one audience, but actually that esports audience is broken down into certain segments, and that's been reflected in the kind of content and the kind of games that we talk about on our platforms. So, like, first of all, it's about targeting the super casual gamer. Your Fortnite players, Minecraft. And the reason from an SEO perspective is those games keep on going. The constant player base. You want to find out, what the latest stuff is, how the latest patch notes affect. But these are people, hyper casual gamers. And so that's what real sport is. It's focusing on those FIFA players, sports related games, but then also kind of those mass games that are available to all ages, like Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, things like that. So let's call real sport like super casual. Gfinityesports.com now has, we've got a guy called Chris Trout, who, former Call of Duty streamer, absolutely incredible at games, knows this game inside out. And so that became the natural place for Call of Duty and like Warzone stuff. And we went big on Call of Duty Warzone. We noticed that, yeah, sure, people want to know about the patch updates and stuff like that. But when you've got that level of expertise writing about a game like that, then they're going to, they want to see, what this guy has to say in terms of how can I improve my game and what can I do to get better. What we did was build a team around that with those kind of similar skills, experts in those kind of games, whether it's FIFA, whether it's Call of Duty, and that is targeting a slightly different audience. So if you look at that pyramid there, where you've got the kind of big mass of real gaming, then you start moving up into the kind of casual gamers who are interested in competitive gaming, which is what Gfinity offers. So what we're trying to do is create a bit of a kind of funnel. And then over the next few months, what we start doing is moving towards participation and taking part in esports, and creating and seeing, and driving users up this pyramid to taking part. We're doing things like hyper engagement and, launching certain platforms to encourage people to talk about and to share their experiences and to knowledge share. And then the other side of that is stealth optional, which is this tech side, because you can talk about all the games in the world, but a big part of gaming, and specifically, and it maps quite well to casual, but also to the elite side of gaming, are peripherals and things like headsets. What's the best headset that I can use for Call of Duty? What's the best keyboard? What's the best graphics card for frames per second and things like that? And that allows us to then, you're starting to see that pyramid emerge where we've got that natural kind of progression of people interested in real sport, being introduced to new games and finding out, going to Gfinity to find out how to get better at those games, and then going to stealth to find out what hardware can give them the edge. And that's the kind of model that we're building. And that's the
cool. It's exciting for us as a brand to work with you guys. You guys have a lot of content, some of which is fragmented. And it's all very much digitally focused. How does that impact the way that you guys share content and the way that your audience engages with it?
Well, in terms of the content being fragmented across the different channels, or
As in, you're covering everything from hardware to the esports. The focus is, how does that impact the way that you share content?
Sure. I think that's the thing. It's really it's being aware of the audience that you're communicating to. Like whereas the Gfinity audience may absolutely love, a certain hard drive, for example, because of an update, and they want to kind of find out about this. I think it just comes down to absolutely understanding and knowing the audience, and over time you just get a feel for it. You know that the audience will react a certain way to this kind of content. Whereas if you try to get that content and put it straight onto real gaming or straight onto stealth optional, then it just wouldn't resonate. I think that's something that we've learned over the course of the year, because it's not just about a one size fits all. It's about tailoring content and selling it a certain way, and packaging up a certain way to that audience. And so sure, you can write about one game like this in Gfinity, and if we just copy and pasted it onto real sport, then the audience may not react to it. So it's about picking out elements.
I think you make a really good point there. I think it's a value exchange, isn't it? I think
I've
worked in the gaming industry now for 12 years, and what I love / hate about the gaming industry is, the gaming audience is relatively ruthless in that they're very, very vocal. They're very, very opinionated. We've already seen, I won't name drop, but we've seen games impacted and changed. We've seen films based on games, main characters changed. And that is because the gaming audience, they don't buy into content that they don't love.
No.
Good content gets shared. Good content builds an audience. So I think I think it's important, and I think clearly you guys are doing that.
Yeah, and I think, Tom, I think on that point as well, I think it absolutely right. It is a value exchange, and it's important in an age of clickbait, and so many publishers, in my opinion, somewhere along the line we forgot about the reader, and we forgot about what really matters to these guys and these women who are playing these games. And that's what we're trying to do. And over the space of the last 12 months, we've put the gamer first, because when we create content that's informed by search, informed by the ears to the ground that we have in the community, on these Reddit things and stuff like that, and we used to amplify it and showcase those voices, then you start to build up kind of credibility. And it goes back to the ad model again. When people feel as though they're getting value and they're coming in and like, yes, thank you, this is what you're answering, a very specific question that I have about this game, then they will absolutely support the site, and they will say, yeah, absolutely, you can show me ads, because I'm getting something out of it, and you know what, I'm going to come back because I really like your content. And I think that's the thing. It's about not creating content to get hits, but creating content to get fans and get loyal advocates of your brand. And that's what we've been really hammering home over the past 12 months.
Cool. So we talked a lot about esports audiences. We talked a lot about gaming audiences. I think you guys bridge both. For you, what do you think differentiates an esports audience from, say, that of a more traditional gaming audience?
Well, I think that's the interesting part, Tom, because there is that, again, to go back to that pyramid, there are natural crossovers, and a lot of the time it's about just how you kind of sell it or package it to that audience. So I think the lines between esports as we know it and casual gaming are blurring. And so what you're going to start to see is more kind of casual gaming sites, and you're seeing it already, start to focus more on esports and start building out esports section. But there are all these stages in between. And what we're trying to do is essentially get these casual gamers and then bridge the gap between casual gaming and esports with this kind of sweet spot in the middle that essentially allows that transition, from kind of casual gaming into esports.
100%. And do you know what? I think streamers actually have done a huge amount to kind of bridge that. So you get casual gamers that are streaming content, but actually reversely you get professional, competitive gamers that are streaming content as well in between. So I think that kind of brings both of those two audiences together.
Exactly, man. And I think you don't need to be a pro gamer to upload an amazing clip of you, scoring 10 goals against your mate on FIFA, one of which is a bicycle kick or whatever. That's the thing. that information is all out there, and there are forums, and that people want to show off their skills. And I think that by kind of muddying the water, so to speak, of the skill gap, and with casual gamers showing off sometimes similar skills to that traditionally known within the elite, then that itself is kind of bridging the gap more. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about growth. You talked about at the beginning of our conversation. You guys have undergone huge growth, and actually, even since working with us, you've undergone growth again. We're 20 minutes in. We've only managed to say the C word twice, I think.
Oh yeah.
COVID-19 has led to an influx in gaming. I think it's not necessarily something that we jump and shout about, but the reality is that people have turned to gaming, entertainment, and certain brands have benefited from it. What impact have you seen across the Gfinity portfolio of brands?
Well, I think what we saw was, luckily there were games like Warzone and things like that, Call of Duty, and a lot of the games that we've already established, a very, very strong foothold on. What happened was those games suddenly got a new influx of people because a lot of people have more time on their hands and staying at home. A lot of them weren't able to go out. And what that's done is over the past kind of 2 or 3 months, these guys and women have come back and have essentially kind of been introduced to Gfinity, and that's led to an influx in traffic. But interestingly, that traffic is staying and remaining there because the content that we're doing is engaging enough that people trust it, which is trust is absolute key. And we want to offer value. We want that value exchange. We want the reader to feel that they're getting something out of it. And I think that's been the main thing. I think for us, yes, you'll see a lot of sites reporting kind of higher traffic numbers and stuff. Perhaps they dip off afterwards. But we've grown in this, but more importantly, we've grown and then maintained, and then we're going to grow again when Q4 comes, and we're in a great position for next gen, the new FIFAs, the new CODs, and hopefully all those new fans that we've made will kind of come right back to us again to find out all the latest, how to get better at the game, like what are the best weapons, how to do that skill move in FIFA 21, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been interesting, but it's something that I think we did a lot of work before to make sure that we were fully prepared to jump on stuff. And
I totally agree. And I think actually platforms and publishers have a bit of a responsibility. I think we've seen a lot of returning games. I would include myself in that. Life gets in the way. People have kids. They don't have time necessary to play games. But also we're seeing new gamers, that maybe didn't have the time or hadn't considered gaming or turning on a PC. They're coming back to the world of esports, back to the world of gaming, and I think they're finding a world of new content. Certainly, improved from say 5-10 years ago.
Yeah. That's
it's a value exchange. I think that platforms and publishers keep hold of that audience, not only for the rest of the year and COVID or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Actually, beyond that and into next year.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, man, because, games, I grew up with, Super Mario and Sonic, and they were quite one-dimensional in that, fair enough, I used to just ring up a number, and they'd say, hey, this is how you beat the boss, and run up huge phone bills on my mom's phone. But, the games nowadays have so many different elements to them. They're as complicated as you want to make them. There is different strategies and different skills and different tweaks that you can do, Sonic the Hedgehog may have just been, the first iteration, but now, games are designed to be instantly playable, pick up and play, sure, but then there's all these other elements that, again, going back to that pyramid, map onto those different kinds of gamer to allow people to get better, to encourage people to get better, and to kind of reward those who want a really high skill experience. So yeah.
Cool. If it makes you feel any better, I was playing dominoes and marbles when I was a kid. So.
Oh, really? I was really into Transformers as well. Big
cool.
Time. So.
Cool. So talking a little bit about Gfinity and I guess growth, and I know you and the business quite well now. You're very ambitious. You guys have got long-term strategies. Talk me through kind of the next couple of years and how you guys are trying to diversify your audience or maybe expand on your existing fan base.
Yeah, that's important because you mentioned diversify and engagement as well. And I think so the first thing is, we've talked about the content in terms of, yes, it's about a value exchange for the reader. But we want to take that further. And there's going to be things coming out in the next, few weeks that will really, we want to encourage readers to kind of, when they see news and when they see stuff, they want to come to us. So, there's going to be some really cool things happening in the next 4 weeks or so that are going to do that. And I think it's going to be quite exciting. Gfinity works on a load of proprietary tech, specifically around forums and engagement, and taking that stuff, tried and tested with, clients like NVIDIA, and then putting it onto something like a platform like Gfinity, Esports.com. Then the idea is that we're going to start to have a kind of perfect storm where you get all these users in because of questions and because of search and because of they trust our stuff, and then starting kind of create this kind of organic kind of terrarium, so to speak, of people kind of just coming back and engaging by comments and stuff. And we've got loads of other things. We're moving into CPA, so we've already built up a kind of e-commerce strategy. So again, what discounts can we offer gamers? If they're going to come to us, then yeah, again, playing on that value exchange. Hey, thank you very much. Here's £15 off a game, exclusive to us. Knock yourself out and enjoy it. And that kind of stuff is what we want to do to these gamers, and that's very much one part of it. The other part of it, the diversification, is perhaps seen best in the move with stealth optional, in that we're moving towards a kind of periphery of gaming, things that are associated with pure gaming news, but the hardware associated with it. So what you're going to see, hopefully, over the next few months is Gfinity's network expand quite considerably into areas associated with gaming, but also kind of a bit more on the outskirts as well. And there's, one of the things we're talking about right now is expanding and building a network with other sites who are keen to grow, who want to, we can help from an SEO perspective, from tapping into you guys and building up their value. But ultimately, yeah, we're going to create a network.
Cool. I'm fortunate in that I'm privy to some of the plans that you guys have got, and I think they're incredibly exciting from our perspective, but also potential advertisers. I think just because they all deepen that relationship with your audience, and I think that's ultimately what people are interested in at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Listen, let's not blow your trumpet too much, but what part of the marketing strategy that you've delivered so brilliantly do you think has had the greatest impact on growth and success of Gfinity so far?
You're slaying me. To be fair, a lot of it is, I think this is, the marketing strategy. This is a combination of a lot of people's work, and a lot of the team are on this call, and there's absolutely no way that this could have happened if it wasn't for these people delivering it. I think the key is the thing that I'm most proud of about the strategy, and it was absolutely a team effort, is that we got the right people, and we've found people who absolutely live and breathe games. They do this because they write the content that they would read, and that I think for me personally, that's the thing I'm most proud of, being involved in making sure that we have that environment and then pushing that forward and encouraging that to grow.
Cool. And I think for me, looking in on some of the work that you guys have done and the conversations that we have, I think that the work and the effort that you put into brand safety is key. For us, if we're going out, even if it's selling display or rich media or content or sponsorship, which we are with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Brand safety at the core of what you guys are doing is really pleasing for us.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it, Tom? Because you see, unfortunately, with so many news sites right now, there's just negativity, and there's you go on there, and there's so much bad stuff going on in the world, and it's nice gaming is an escape, and I think in this going back to your point about COVID, I think lots of people saw gaming, and lots of people now see gaming more so than ever as an escape of some of the stuff, to escape some of the realities of what we're living in at the moment. But also from a brand perspective, it's a safe space for them to operate, without being attached to some of these negative news stories that you see on some of the bigger news publications. And so I think, that's something that, perhaps a lot of brands may have dipped their toe in the water with gaming before, and then perhaps, because of what happened, we're like, okay, you know what, we're going to go in and we're going to give this a go. And perhaps they were really, really surprised with some of the engagement that they got. And I think hopefully as we move into the next financial year, those kind of toes in the water and stuff may turn into bigger projects, as gaming builds trusts with those kind of non-endemic brands.
I'll stop you there, Tal. That takes us quite nicely into kind of the last set of questions, and then we're going to have audience questions.
Sure.
The thing I want to talk about is esports and Gfinity and Real Sport as an ad platform. So first and foremost, you guys focused on growth for the first couple of years of your existence. This year, you decided to integrate ads onto the platform. Gladly, you partnered with Venatus. What was the trigger for that beyond just revenue, I'm guessing?
Well, without blowing your trumpet too much, Tom, you guys are, some of the best, if not the best, at what you do. In terms of gaming, your tech's been great, and obviously, kicking it off, it was fantastic. So, yeah, I think you guys know the space, and every single month you bring fantastic campaigns through Gfinity and Real Sport. I think even before we started, we had Doom and some massive games on there. And I think the return that you guys are seeing is really, really positive as well, with Epic and some of the stuff that we've been working on together. So, fantastic relationships in the gaming industry. But I think fundamentally you understand the gamer. And when you go onto the sites and you see, these, really amazing takeovers, everything that you do, you just understand. You understand what works. And I think that's it. You guys just know your stuff.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. So ad spend in traditional sports spheres, are long-standing. You look at Heineken and PlayStation and the Champions League. These kind of associations are very much long-standing. What sort of brands should be spending in esports, in your opinion, and why?
Well, I think it's easy for esports to suddenly be like, oh yeah, just endemic gaming brands, hardware and stuff like that. And yeah, I think as a gaming focused publisher, it's important to make sure that your content and your content absolutely supports those endemic brands, where you can, because you need to target your market. But I think it goes back to the COVID stuff that we talked about, in that hopefully a lot of brands have seen, perhaps who didn't really consider gaming as a proper outlet for ads and to engage an audience and drive them towards something. I think, hopefully those brands are starting to see the value of that. And I'd like to see more and more brands outside of the gaming space now tapping into this gaming audience. Because again, there's going to be so many people who, may like who play Call of Duty, but may like, a non-endemic brand, for example, like Nivea or like shaving or Gillette or anything like that. And there's natural parallels. And I think going back to the differences in packaging the content, that's where our expertise can come in. And, we can work together to create content that really, really talks to that audience. If you want to talk to the competitive gamer, we'll do a campaign on Gfinity together and we'll package it a certain way. If you want to talk to the casual gamer, then we'll do it another way. And so it's just, I'd like to work with brands outside of gaming as well as obviously in the gaming space, because with Q4 coming up and PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X coming out, gaming is going to be absolutely on the forefront of people's minds. It's a seismic event at the end of the year, new console launches, and there's so much opportunity for brands outside of gaming to get involved, and we can help tell those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think listen, Gfinity as a platform, you guys are fortunate in the gaming and entertainment. They're a very tech savvy audience. Those kind of campaigns are naturally going to happen anyway. I think one of the myths that I wanted to debunk today is, the reality is and I say we gamers, we're still consumers. We certainly have a propensity to spend online. We're homeowners, we're car owners, we're parents, we're income earners. So I think there is opportunity beyond the obvious, and I think definitely is a platform that can unlock that.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And I think also, it's important to, again, there has been a behaviour change. A lot of people right now are staying in and spending online rather than returning to the high street. And so again, it's a very good opportunity to perhaps test campaigns. If you're a non-endemic brand, then try stuff out, because you've got this audience here now that's far more, it is absolutely primed, and can certainly be lucrative for you.
Cool. Thanks so much, Tal. I think that wraps up kind of the questions that I had. We're going to open up. We've got about, I would say, probably around about 10 more minutes. We've got some audience questions. I'm going to fire for them.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Somebody has actually asked, are Tom and Tal twins? I think they may well be taking.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. Oh,
we get that all the time.
We've got the same hair.
Okay, cool. So the first, I don't actually know who any of these are, so we'll just fire through them. What advice would you give to someone looking to grow their gaming/esports website?
That's a great question, actually, and it depends what you want to do, and like what your ambitions are. I think we are and we will be partnering with, we want to encourage people who want to grow to come to us, because we can help, and we want to, we'll be making that official in the next kind of few weeks, I'm sure. But yeah, what I would say is, don't underestimate SEO. So don't just think about the present, think about the future as well, and have a look at the trends, and have a look at how people look and absorb and create and, and talk about games. So that would be one thing. And I think the second thing is really understand your audience. And sorry, that sounds incredibly generic, but just going back onto that pyramid, there's lots of different audience segments there. And if you're looking to grow, rather than just try and cover absolutely everything, like focus and hone in on one or two of those things, and whether that's kind of tips and tricks and stuff around a particular game, or absolutely high-end hardware associated with another game. Like lots of people, lots of publishers, especially the smaller guys, spread themselves way too thin, when actually it's about becoming an expert on a certain segment of an audience, most of the time on a certain game.
I completely agree. We have certain sites within our portfolio. Some of them they're getting 50 to 100 million, estimated views a month. But what they all do is focus on something very, very specific, whether it be a particular game or a certain need within a game. It could be price checking for FIFA or Animal Crossing.
Yeah, exactly.
Very specific niche demand or need is kind of what it would be my kind of feedback. One thing, I think this one's specifically for you. When do you expect esports tournaments will move back into the physical arena space?
That's a difficult one.
It might be one for Boris Johnson, maybe that one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're seeing with Leicester at the moment that how quickly things can turn, and suddenly a lockdown that was meant to end goes on for a couple of weeks. I think realistically, we've done some amazing stuff with the virtual GP in the Gfinity arena, and that wasn't without its challenges. We have to make sure everything's safe and set up, and in no way was there a crowd or a massive crowd there. And I think you mentioned this stuff last year, Tom. That's when you talk about the return of those kind of events and those thousands and thousands of people watching, and sometimes in a huge stadium, the likes of Fortnite, then I think that's probably next year, I would say. But what we'll see is probably a load of online tournament stuff go on. And again, Gfinity has a load of online tech and online tournament tech. So watch this space. There's going to be some cool stuff coming in there.
Question here about the audience. How diverse are esports audiences, or is it predominantly still male demographic?
I think that's so. There's two things there. One, esports, absolutely, again, because I think it's always been fighting against this like stereotype of esports gamers are this, and this. But actually, hopefully, over the course of this call, we've cemented the idea that there are different kind of breakdowns. An esports gamer isn't just one demographic. Actually, esports is multiple demographics. And so what you'll see is that that will be reflected in that pyramid again. So when you look at the kind of mass and probably the biggest pool of people who are interested in competitive gaming and gaming, then you're going to see a much more diverse audience than you would 5 or 6 years ago. There's more female gamers coming through now. It also goes down to the games as well. So some games may have a typical male skew, but some games may be much more kind of balanced. And again, it's making sure that as a publisher, we represent those kind of games as well. The likes of Animal Crossing and FIFA compared to COD and Apex and and Overwatch again on this side. So it all comes down to different games. And I think if you want to target different audience demographics, and we can help, or it's important to understand that each game has a very, very specific demographic, and that esports demographic is kind of different in each game.
Just to mirror that, I've been to E3 now probably 6 or 7 years running. I've been to some of the bigger esports events that you've talked about, Gamescom in Europe, and actually, it is much more of a blend, not just in terms of gender, but also in terms of age as well. I think at the moment we're seeing a massive growth in competitive gamers, female competitive gamers, in typically male domains, things like FIFA and COD. We're seeing some really good female competitors coming through the ranks and doing really, really well. So I think, hopefully that will just go from strength to strength.
Yeah, and I think Tom, the age thing is important as well, because again, like a lot of people assume that the esports generation is just a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds who that's not the case. And again, with COVID, and even before that, because of the way that gaming's changed and we're helping bridge the gap, and gamers and publishers are helping bridge the gap between casual gaming and competitive gaming, then part of that is you may not need the lightning reflexes of a 17-year-old to still be competitive. And people compete for different reasons. Again, it's not just about those £1 million things, but rather competing just to compete and for casual gameplay and participation. So that because of that, there's been this kind of democratization of esports that we are fully behind in everything that we do.
I'm conscious of time. We've already gone past my Q2 deadline. So if people are still happy to stick around, I think we have a couple. I've had 3 questions from the audience specifically, so we'll manage those if that's cool, Tal.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They've specifically said for Talal. Do you think there will be a time where esports overtakes the popularity of traditional sports? If so, how long do you think that will take?
That's a very, very good question. So I mean, everyone goes on about esports growing and growing. So one thing that will happen is that esports will get bigger and bigger. I mean, you don't even need to say that. What will happen, in my view, is that esports will live side by side with traditional sport, and I think it will be seen as valuable and as important entertainment platform or entertainment genre. Sport, and we're starting to see that already with the virtual GP, the e-Premier League. These things are growing and growing in popularity year after year after year. So I don't think it's a case of overtaking. Well, actually, you could argue that viewing figures from YouTube, for example, is actually far surpasses that of some kind of traditional sport.
I totally agree. I also think they don't necessarily need to be seen as separate, totally separate.
No. I think there's natural parallels and crossovers, and actually, you see about kind of piggybacking off each one.
You see Harry Kane, Dele Alli. I've named just Spurs players there, but we see basketball players, footballers, all taking part in Fortnite and Call of Duty. So I think those lines will kind of be blurred, and I think they'll both go from strength to strength, and actually I think there'll be a massive crossover. Even I think traditional media will see kind of both be kind of shown as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And just quickly on that, I think gaming is open to everyone, and whereas traditional sport can sometimes top end traditional sport it's incredibly difficult to try and get through. With gaming, there's a natural ladder there that allows kind of progression, and is open to kind of everybody. So I think that's going to really help supercharge the next kind of couple of years. But yeah, we'll definitely see it live side by side, and then each genre kind of helping each other out.
Okay, so I need to make sure. I'm not entirely sure that I understand this question, but we'll give it a go.
Okay, here we go.
Given the size of traditional sporting sponsorships, where are we now, and how do we build this out over time to be considered as significant?
Well, when you look at some of the Champions League sponsorships and stuff like that, you're already starting to see on some of the major gaming events, huge brands getting behind it and putting their weight behind it, from an endemic and non-endemic point of view. So I think we're already starting to see that kind of stuff. But there is, again, there's a certain, that's happening, but there's still a piece of work to be done where, going back to the previous point, it's about brands coming in, testing and learning from the gaming space, proving it as they're doing, and as brands who are coming into the space are doing so, and then kind of expanding. So, I think as esports grows over the next couple of years, we will see those endemic and non-endemic brands doing those bigger campaigns. But we are already seeing in tournaments and the big offline stuff, huge brands getting involved and putting out some serious sponsorship.
I think also, I question, how is traditional sports sponsorships valued? Linear TV, outdoor. How do you quantify that audience? I think the beauty of esports is that it can be tracked through data, and we have those numbers.
Yeah.
Not necessarily do we need to be looking to achieve the same volumes in terms of revenue, but ultimately we can justify things through data, and as that audience grows, then I think
exactly. And Tom, and that's the key thing, man. I think it's all about data, and over the next couple of years, data is going to be absolutely crucial. And some of a lot of the kind of mechanisms that we're using and the strategy that we have is ultimately about, we want to understand our audience. We want to provide that data to brands to allow them to better to help steer and inform their decisions. So I think that as that kind of sphere takes off, you may start to see kind of traditional spend in things like TV, for example, or in other areas, start to shift into the kind of more gaming space. But transparency is key, and data is going to be absolutely key for that.
Cool. Last question. I think we may have touched on this a little bit. I think someone may have sent this in previously. How would you go about building a content strategy for brands that are not within the traditional endemic partnership space?
Traditional endemic, yeah, okay, I see. So I think it's about understanding. If I was launching, say, a face cream, for example, I would understand. It just comes down to identifying a reason to care and to understanding, and trying to find a natural crossover. So, for example, if you are serving up an amazing piece of Fortnite video that has the 10 best Fortnite, moments, it doesn't really matter who it's sponsored by, because that you are creating a piece of content that absolutely appeals to that audience, and then you get your brand in there. So I guess the key thing is understand what content resonates with the audience that you're going after, in this case gamers, and then build your brand into that, rather than going brand first and then going for the content. Always keep the gamer front of mind in everything that you do. So have a look at Reddit, have a look at gfinityEsports.com, and then find out how gamers absorb and look at the video and the articles, and then kind of work it in there. But always keep the gamer front of mind, and then attach the brand onto that, which can be a bit weird, but it definitely, that's the way to do it.
Cool. Tal, that is it. Have you enjoyed yourself?
Yes, I shut the doors, so it's like a sauna in here. So I've been slowly frying, but apart from that, no, it's been great. It's been
cool.
Great.
Tal, I really, really appreciate your time. Everybody that's listening, thank you very much for kind of tuning in. I hope it was of value to you guys. Listen, if you want to either speak to myself or Tal about either Venatus or Gfinity, you can do on market@venatusmedia.com. We're also on all the social media platforms. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully you got to know a little bit about Gfinity and their business. I'm going to love you and leave you. If you have anything else, you know how to get hold of us.
Thank you very much, everyone. Absolute pleasure.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. See you later.